know how to create, share, update, those kinds of things, but yeah.
I'm Tom Bryan. I'm an instructor in Nelson Institute and Housing, and I've been interested in using Google Sheets for a sign-up form. And if anyone's done that, and avoided the scenario of someone taking another student's name off.
Ooh,
Okay. I know about protected ranges, but yes.
John.
Saul.
John Oppenheimer, instructional designer of the Division of Continuing Studies, and I'm just very here to learn and just very
All right,
put it on.
observed. Very good, thanks for coming. Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim. I work in the English as a Second Language program. I'm here to see, I'm pretty comfortable using Google Apps, certainly using forms and docs. I'd like to see what else is possible, really, and I'm sure there's a lot.
Okay, what else is possible? Good, all good to do that. Cliff.
Cliff Cunningham, I'm with Do It, Learn UW team, and I'm just here to learn.
Okay.
I'm Heidi. I'm also in the program in ESL, and I'm interested in best practices of where to put the Google Docs in your Canvas. Does it go in collaborations? Could I just have a link in my announcement or link it into a module? Are there any advantages or disadvantages to those different ways to set it up?
All right.
I'm Lauren Rosen. I direct the UW System Collaborative Language Program, and I teach language teachers how to teach online and in blended environments. And I have used collaborations with Google Docs and have some, I was asked to talk a little bit, which I'll get to later, have some positive and negative experiences that I can kind of, what my workarounds were for that. I also used it as a way of collecting, like I'd put in a form and I would collect information from students into a spreadsheet that was then shared so everybody could see it but not edit it, that sort of thing. So I've used it in a few different ways.
All right. Eric?
I'm Eric Pelosa with extension CEOEL, and I'm an instructional designer there. And we're just diving into Canvas now. We're going through migration, and I have a couple of courses. One faculty that's using Google Sites, so I'm kind of interested to see if anybody has used Google Sites with the integration, and just in general, like integration with Google for like group projects. We have faculty that are starting to move away from like UCU, and now we're just using mostly like Google Drive. So I'm looking to see an example.
And what is UCU for the Madison folks who don't know what it is?
It's, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a, UCU is where students can come together and they can record like remote group sessions together, like a meeting pretty much.
So for us, it's Blackboard Collaborate.
Yeah.
Okay. Peter?
I'm Peter Van Cannon, faculty in kinesiology. And I've been experimenting with Google for, some time. And I'm most interested in figuring out, I don't really like the file system in Canvas at all. And so I kind of stayed away from that. But I'm interested in figuring out kind of like what the effective use of Google is, how to use it most effectively. And so specifically, like the differences between what's available in the Google Collaborate menu thing, how that interfaces or how that's different from just using a Google Drive or incorporating a Google Drive as something that holds lecture, course resources and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, how to use Google most effectively within Canvas.
All right.
I'm Jennifer Hornbaker. I'm a project assistant and I help run the active teaching lab. And I'm excited to see what everyone has to say. I'm sorry.
And we would not be able to do this without Jennifer, so.
That's right.
Well, they clearly can because I'm not here a lot.
I'm Tom. I work at Do It Academic Technology. I'm here just to see what you guys use Google Docs, how you use them.
My name is Kim. I work at WCER in the School of Ed. And we design online learning for teachers of English language learners. So we work with adult learners across the country, teachers primarily. So we want our learners to be able to share their own PowerPoints, material that they create, and not look at it as an assignment. We want them to see each other's work. So how to utilize Google Drive or any other tools so that everything can kind of be put into one place.
I'm gonna put that down as social learning / resources.
Perfect.
You might not be able to see part of it, but that's okay.
I'm Angela. I'm in biomolecular chemistry. So I teach a senior level lab course, and over the last few semesters, I've been trying to find ways to use collaborative docs to encourage partner and group work. And so it's been things like creating an Excel sheet that they're going to use for data analysis, and then they seem to automatically know to put that, upload it. It's just an Excel sheet I create, they upload it, and then partners can work on data calculation together. I've also, over the last couple semesters, I'll make a template PowerPoint that students then populate and make presentations. So finding ways to use Google Docs to support collaborative learning for that kind of stuff.
I'm Frank, I'm in the math department, and I run the tutorial program among other things, but frankly, this is a selfish maneuver by me. I'm really tired of generating all this stuff myself, so I'm gonna force them to if it kills me.
Part of that, how to sell this. You don't sell it, you force them. That's how we do it. All right, thank you, everybody. And with that, again, I want to direct you to this, our course site. Oh,
It's kind of a locked module.
Yep.
It's locked. Yeah, we can't.
locked module. See, this is why I brought Jennifer today. She can go in and fix that. Colleen.
My name is Colleen. I'm new to UW. I'm an instructional designer for DCS. I've seen Google Classroom when I was teaching high school years ago, and I got to use Google as a student in a graduate program last year, so I'm just excited to see things from the design side.
Okay, yeah, incorporated it from the get-go rather than adding it later in the design. All right. Who'd like to start? Does anything on this list pop out and inspire you to share? Tim?
I'll start because I'm probably just thinking about who I'm sharing this contributing space with. It's probably quite simple what I'm doing. So I just wanted to share, we've just, in the course that I teach, which is a writing course for international students, they have to write 3 papers, and in the past they've all been individually written papers, they're research papers. And what I wanted to do after taking Blend in early summer and doing the Canvas courses, what I wanted to do was use, Blend's really good by the way, was I wanted to make the very first paper that the students do a collaborative paper. And I wanted to use Google Docs to do that. I wanted to use the collaboration tools within Canvas to do that. So, and as well as trying to kind of shepherd students through this process, I had 4 other instructors to shepherd through this as well, because it was a significant departure from what we usually do. And not every instructor teaching the course was trying this. I wanted to just pilot it with a few people and see what the issues were. So we chose to go, instead of using collaborations on the left side of the menu, because we thought that was a little too open, we wanted to use the groups function. And within the groups function to then use collaborations. And some people, some of our instructors pretty much did everything for the students in terms of setting up Google Docs. Others, like me, I was much more hands-off, and I just wanted students to kind of figure out what was within the Google Canvas group space and kind of create their own Google Docs, which I was still part of. I was still able to see what they were doing.
Just as an aside, it's talking about collaborations here. It allows both Office 365 and Google, and I think there's something else, I'm not sure exactly, but it sort of gives you a lot of flexibility. And again, Laura's gonna talk about that in a little bit. And you're talking about under the people, having them create student groups or learning communities.
So it kind of works like a little mini Canvas site within the main Canvas site. And I think I had one student in my class who had used groups before,
Okay.
and the others did start to get a little lost, you know, and we had to do just a bit of in-class teaching them how to get back to the main site and how to get back to the group homepage, but it didn't take a lot. So once students were comfortable and familiar with how to navigate Canvas, Google Docs was not a problem for any student at all. We just finished that paper and I've been getting feedback via a Canvas quiz. I wish I'd used a Google form to do it, because then I could have collated the data a lot easier for myself and shared it with the rest of the instructors. Anyway, but it's been overwhelmingly positive for my students, for us as instructors, and we're definitely going to roll it out further in our course. So yeah, forms and docs as one way to get feedback, and the other for students to collaborate on a shared writing project.
So to Christine's question of how familiar were your students, you deal with not the
international students.
You deal with international students, and are they also as familiar? 95% come in with some experience. Okay.
They were all over it. They had problems. Canvas, they had problems.
Okay. So that's kind of nice. If the learning bar is Canvas, then Google Docs is gravy for them.
So in your actual, like the students' actual engagement with the Google documents, though, that was all kind of on the Google side of things. It was in the browser, they go to their Google Drive and they just create them.
Well, I had them in class. I used class time to show them where to go show that the group's icon appears once they put them in a group, because it's not there unless you're actually in a group. The little icon on the far left.
On the left, yeah.
So that doesn't actually appear until the student's actually in a group. So it was taking them there, having them kind of navigate. Then once they select on their group, navigating, that menu, and then showing them how to set up a collaborative Google Doc within their group. And once they did that, it was happy. They were happy.
So really the biggest problem is not Google Universe, but Google in Canvas, or Canvas's version of integration of Google. Christine has the next question.
I have so many questions. I'm actually a certified trainer for Google, so I'm deep into it. And you use Classroom, so I'm interested in talking to you, but there is something that's brand new from Google called CourseKit. You've heard of it?
Yep.
It's a way of packaging Google, a more full suite of Google tools with deeper sharing and things like that, and then just putting it in Canvas or putting it in another learning management system.
So CourseKit will or is already able to be integrated nicely, will be integrated into Canvas.
Yeah, we're
something to look forward to.
I got our Google Apps admin ed extension to get us in the beta program, so.
What I haven't figured out is how CourseKit facilitates something different than Canvas itself with all of the LTI and Google integration of all the apps. Because to me, CourseKit looked like the course management system or student learning system, whatever you want to call it, for Google, for those who don't have something like Canvas or Moodle or any of those others.
It's as far as I know, it's not a learning management system in and of itself. I think it's a sort of like a plugin or an enhancement that you can add that I think helps the difficulty navigating to turning things in or finding groups or things like this, sharing permissions or things like that. I've oftentimes worked with people who, well, I shared that with you or I sent it to you and the sharing permissions are wrong.
Yep.
And then I got to have a conversation with that again. But a lot of what Google Classroom does is automatically does that for you on both ends. So I think that's what it's about, but I'm not 100% sure because I haven't gotten too hands-on with it
I saw the demo at InstructureCon, and the idea is that when the student submits their Google Doc, it transfers ownership automatically to the instructors
yet.
and for grading, so that the student can't change their work after they've pressed the
turning-
submit button.
But that seems to happen already automatically in Canvas. That's why I'm confused
The
at
way
what
the
course I'm gonna
Canvas,
add.
the Canvas Google Doc takes like a snapshot of the Google Doc.
Yeah.
So the difference is that the reviewer will be able to add comments directly in the Google Doc.
Okay,
And there's a mechanism to save your comments as part of a feedback bank. So you can reuse those comments
okay.
throughout the assignment. They don't have it working yet with groups or rubrics or any of the fancy stuff, but the basic idea is sound. The other neat part of it is that when it goes back to the student, it also creates an archive copy of the assignment with the feedback in the instructor's Google Drive.
So I'm very excited about this because Canvas's integration with Google I've always found really problematic for several reasons. But so I'm excited that Google is getting involved and actively working with Canvas and sort of fixing a lot of these issues that sounds like will be fixed through this. And also the idea of having feedback in the Google document instead of in the speed grader in that little hidden button that the students don't need to know to click on but never click on. And that way the effort that the instructor puts in giving feedback will be more visible because that's very visible in Google Docs. And they wouldn't even have to know to click that hidden button to see it in the Canvas thing. John?
I did locate it online, doing a quick Google search for Google CourseKit. There's a beta program right now, so I don't know if they want to kind of do that formally or maybe they want to do it informally.
We will leave that to other decision makers who may choose to turn it on through their process. And I'm on that committee now, so.
Can I just say I learned that there's a group tabs on the side today?
Yes, the group tabs doesn't show up even for instructors unless,
I'm apparently in two groups, but I
Yeah,
didn't
could
realize that.
you go ahead and click on it, because I'm not that familiar with what it even looks like.
Well, I don't, because
Get
I make student groups and then I give it a name that usually has the students' names in it, so
But
I'm
that's the
wondering what it looks like for them.
my understanding is that I can't even do that until I create groups in here. And I don't do that right now.
You must be in
No,
some,
you need to be in
You're
the
in
group
some.
before it's.
I need to be in the group,
Yeah.
so
So somebody put you in a group.
because you're in a group. 'Cause you're
Yeah, just go and click on it. Just,
Am I in a
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
what it-
Apparently,
I
Because
put
you
people
On the
in
red,
groups for
the
a
red
previous
navigation
lab.
bar?
that's why I'm in groups.
Right
Yeah.
under
Oh,
courses.
this one.
Yeah.
Okay, I
I
can do
didn't know it
that.
was there.
Yeah, I don't ever think of going to this red bar at all. Hey, look at that on the last group.
Groups.
Let's just all spam.
So now I'm realizing it's really important to like name your groups with your class name or with the names of the students, which I never realized.
Yeah.
And something like McBurney students.
So- Good. Okay, hey,
Anyway,
so, all right. Thanks, Tim.
Mhm.
And what next, so you also spoke a little bit to the multi-user, the how to sell it to the profs because you had 4 other instructors that you had to, you used the word shepherd. That was nice.
Yeah, no, they were.
Frank, you just have to shepherd the rest of your
I do
time.
have to show them, yeah.
They were actually very,
Oh.
they were very.
Good. So students are comfortable with it, although the integration is not yet super comfortable, although we hope that it will be soon with CourseKit if it gets turned on. That's good to know. Let's talk about Google Sheets for sign up or Google for sign up in general. Tom or Lauren.
Well, I usually do it as a form and then I share the sheet that the data goes into in a view-only mode within the page so that students can see. And it could be that they're, if I'm having them, for example, I want them to discuss each other's projects so they can put their name and a link to their project in a Google form, and then everybody's able to click on that link to see each other's stuff. That's one way I've used it. Also for signing up for groups rather than my choosing who's gonna be with whom, especially if they need to have some synchronous time together. I let them sign up, and then because they can see who's already signed up with whom, they pick somebody who doesn't have a partner yet. So that's how I've used that piece of it.
So in the Google form, you also have a link to the associated spreadsheet that they can see.
I have
Or the
I have
summary.
the Google form, and then underneath in the same Canvas page, I'll have the embedded sheet that gets generated every time the form
Got it.
gets data entry.
So they can actually scroll down and see what's
And
happening
see
as they
Right,
go and fill out the form for
Right.
themselves.
exactly.
And then they can go back in and re-edit their responses? Or is it just a one-time, you can't go back and edit your responses?
They could, but they usually don't have to, because they can, if it's a group pairing kind of thing, they can see before they, in that case, I might have the spreadsheet part above the form so they can see who's already paired.
Got it.
So I kind of.
John?
So I was just gonna say because I was thinking about how you avoid people removing other people's names if they know yours, right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking that when you started talking about the embedding, I'm like, oh, perfect, because you can just embed the view only version of it. And so they can see that. So the only things the students can see is the form and the view only sheet.
Right,
not
and they
the
can't edit it at all.
editable sheet. Yeah.
Right.
And I had it as, so my experience is I had it as a sign-up sheet, it was just a class of 20. And these two buddies wanted to have the presentation, it's right next to each other, so they deleted somebody else who had signed up in order to fit on that day. And they didn't know about revision history or something, so
So you failed them.
it was, well, we had to talk to the academic integrity folks in the provost's office about that. So it was, it became kind of a big yucky thing for everybody involved, but a valuable lesson, I hope, for them. We'll see.
Should I talk about my collaboration
Yeah, please.
issue?
Because
So-
collaborations is, frankly, it's one of the things that I have found really problematic, and I just can't wrap my head around it. So
Yeah.
how do you use it?
So, we had students collaborating on some content in a doc, and that's the gist. Issues that we ran into, one is when they create the doc in which they're collaborating, and you go to use SpeedGrader, it only shows up that the person who created the doc is actually the person who turned it in, rather than both of them having submitted it, even though they both collaborated on it. So you had to know who was with whom, so that you would go into SpeedGrader and grade them without actually looking at the doc at that time. And because of that, rather than doing specific comments in the rubric in Canvas, we would do commenting on the doc itself so that both partners could see the comments and information. So then, and this was after the fact, but whether or not I'll need it with CourseKit, I discovered something called Orange Slice, which is a add-on to Google that allows you to create rubrics very similar in style to what you can have as a rubric in Canvas. So in the future, I think I would do the whole commenting and rubric thing within the doc itself, and then just transfer the grade over into to Canvas so it talks to the student information system. Does that make sense? So basically, all of the commenting, editing, grading happens in just the doc.
So all of the formative feedback is there, and then the summative part just
Yeah, just
goes
basically
straight.
the number would be placed in Canvas for a grade. That would be my way to get around it, because it doesn't, especially when they submit it and it only shows up under the person who created the doc as the submitter and not everybody that was involved. It's kind of
Yeah.
yucky.
That's what groups help. With that, this, and if it's a group, if you set up as a group assignment, everybody gets that grade.
Yeah, my problem was that I didn't want to pre-assign who was in what group. I wanted them to choose because they were going to have to work on some of it in an online synchronous tool and then be reporting in the doc about that experience. And so I couldn't determine when two people were gonna be able to have that synchronous time together.
Have you used the self-sign-up for groups to share under people?
Self-sign up for, well, that's kind of what this was.
Because if you set up, you could create the group set and associate the assignment with that group set. But then the
Right.
students can actually create those groups.
And they did do that, but still when they went into the Collaborate tool to do their report, it still was attached to just the one person. It wasn't, the report wasn't attached to the group itself. It was,
And when they submit to the assignment, though,
If-
I think it
You gotta
should.
make sure you set up the assignment as a group assignment. There's a wee box to check. So that might be it.
I'm gonna check it now and see if I had done it.
Yeah, setting up the assignment. What's the term they use?
It is, as a group assignment, right?
Let's see.
Start right here.
And then if you click that, the box opens,
It's-
asking you to choose the group set.
Right.
So good, that's a good way to, if you grade the one, everybody gets, you just grade the one thing. So if you have 5 people in a group and you have a group assignment, you do 5 times less grading.
Yeah. That's so nice.
So good. Assignments are the best.
Group assignments.
Group assignments are the best,
It's always
yeah.
halves or
Okay.
more than halves.
Excellent.
Thank you. It is not, that box is not checked.
All right.
But you
So
can
that
check
might
it.
have fixed the
I think
problem.
you
Yeah.
can you check it after they've started submitting?
No, it actually is
No.
telling me people have already submitted, so I can't click that button.
You can change the assigned grades to each student individually though. You can
Yeah.
change
True, which
that
I've had to
during-
do when like
Yeah.
there's a
Just-
problem. I have to go submit separately.
So when they submit their report, if so one of the things we were looking at was the amount of, or the significance of the contribution of each person, so they didn't both necessarily get the same grade. So with it checked off as a group assignment, do they automatically get the same grade and then you go in and change it for the person that doesn't get that grade?
So the way we set up that portion, we had 20% of, so the first draft, everyone got the same score, the second draft, everyone got the same score, but there was a 20% chunk that was based on individual participation. And to do that, they took a Canvas quiz to kind of say what they did and say what their partners did. And we used that feedback to assign that grade. It was just a completely separate assignment worth 20% of the paper.
Okay. So in this case, I guess I was doing that without creating a separate assignment because I didn't call it a group assignment. And so therefore, each person's individual grade, I was posting individually.
But you still could do that with a group assignment, especially if you mute. I mean,
Can you?
yeah, so right where John has clicked assign grades to
Assign
each student
grades.
individually, so you would just, for each person, you enter their own grade versus if you don't have that checked, it'll pull up by group, you're
Okay.
in speed grader. If you have it checked, it'll pull up as individual students in speed grader. So if it's checked like that, so if it's not checked and you enter a grade for one student, it'll auto-populate.
It'll auto-populate, that's
Yeah.
cool.
And it's
Okay.
actually kind of annoying if you forget to check, if you try to change the grade, you're like, you put in one grade and then try to change it to the other person, it'll auto-populate back, so you have to like.
Hope you catch it, hope you catch it.
And again, always mute the grades
mute while
until
entering.
you're all
Done.
graded.
Okay.
Otherwise, you get the
Okay.
emails from the students who didn't get theirs graded yet.
Or they get the grade and then it gets lower.
Yeah.
So just let me make sure I understand. So you're saying that if you have this checked here, or unchecked, the assign each individually, that if you go to try and change the grade in the grade book,
Mhm.
it will,
It'll automatically change the
so
part.
there's no way to modify a particular student's grade?
If you check this, then you
Yeah, no, I'm
automatically.
saying with this unchecked, there's no way to modify that student's.
You can still modify it, it'll just modify both.
No, I know, I know.
Yeah, but,
All three, all
Individually.
four, all five.
So, yeah.
which you'll notice real quick and then you'll be like, oh, I gotta go. check that out.
And it would be worth testing whether you could turn that on
after the fact?
I
After you
have.
start.
I have done
I
that.
did that this morning.
Gotcha, so you could use it, populate,
Yeah,
And
so
then
like
go back,
especially if you've got a
hit
partnership
the
where
check mark.
something went wrong and like now they're not getting the same grade.
And the answer is yes, you can uncheck that after the fact, so you can have it checked. Everybody will be graded the same. You go back in, uncheck that, change the individual
It's
grades.
just a group assignment.
Lower Angeles.
and I would say be careful, because I don't know if it would do it the other direction. If you go in having given different grades, I don't know if you can then go and turn that off.
I'm not sure about that.
I mean, because that's
Great. I'm no.
Yeah.
All right, well, this is a different topic. This is about assignments and
I'm
groups
so
here.
sorry.
Let's go talk a little bit more about Google over here. Google Sites, tell us about Google Sites, Eric. Is that you?
Yeah, oh, I just have faculty, they kind of have like a journal set up throughout, each module is a journal. And so we have it set up as just like a template for students to go to. And now that we're switching to Canvas, I'm interested to see if anybody has tried anything like that, integrating it into.
So they base a journal or a blog that is on Google Sites and is open to the world?
No, I think it's just for that class.
So it's a password protected?
Yeah, it's a template that we created, put it out there, they have to search for it, and then they kind of download it. And then what we currently have them doing is just sharing like the URL link with the faculty member.
And yet it's another way then for the students to learn from each other and through that social learning so that they can put something down and everybody else in the class can see it, which sometimes is more difficult to do in assignments in Google, in Canvas.
Yeah, they're kind of using it instead of discussions to make it a little easier.
How many of you have played with Google Sites at all recently?
Just
It's
now
their
as a
new-
student.
As a student?
As a student.
Because I know that they keep changing it, and it keeps, I hear it keeps getting better, although I have not been in it for several years now.
There's a pretty big redesign between classic sites and the new sites.
The
It's much
problem
more
being,
modern.
it does look more modern, but if you know code and you're used to adjusting code to make it look exactly how you want, you can't do that.
So they've simplified
So
it.
they've simplified it for the non-techie
Kind of like,
site creator.
And has anybody tried embedding the Google site into Canvas?
I could try it right now, just
Good,
to see what
good.
it'll do.
Yeah, it would
Should I
be
put
really
it into a
interesting.
page or what should I?
Yeah, into a page,
All right.
sure. So, one of the things, and the reason that I asked this is because one of the things on the activity sheet that Tom figured out how to do, I think it was you, was how to embed Google Drive folders within Canvas. So you can have resources within your Google Drive, and we've got examples of that here that I can show you.
It's better organized than Canvas.
And that helps with the Canvas organization, exactly. So on the page here, I've got Google Drive examples. Now, the thing, it takes a second to load, but so this is the same as this. And I'm basically just taking it and embedded it into here. Now, I've only made it 400 or 200 pixels or whatever that is. I could have made it 800 pixels so you can see everything. And the folders don't work the same. So for example, if I open up this embedded folder here, instead of opening up in Canvas, it still goes back to the Google Drive. So it's not, if your goal is to keep people inside the Canvas framework, then don't have any folders. But if you just have a list of assignments or worksheets or something like that,
what if you just open a document? Does it open?
the document itself will also, I think, open up into a. Here, let's actually use a document.
Okay.
That's weird, because mine open up inside the iframe.
Oh,
Is that a checkbox? Might be a checkbox, but.
Chrome, but my students
I'm in Chrome.
use whatever and they open up in the iframe.
Directions on how to do all of this are on, well, there's a link to it here under organized files and Google Docs. And that leads to this whole other,
Might it make a difference because you're the owner of that document? as opposed
Yeah, I
to
wonder.
someone who's not the owner?
it might. So one way to find out is for you guys to go in in the Canvas site and check it out and see if it opens up within the iframe or if it opens up on the own. This requires some HTML, and so it scares a lot of people off, including me. Like it was a complicated process to set this up. So I'm excited to see if CourseKit lets us shortcut
For his.
some of this stuff. And we'll see in the future. And maybe even a Google site, because that would be awesome. Google site because it's so simple, it's very easy to say, here are the documents that you need to list for this assignment. And over here, these are the ones you need for this assignment. And it sets it up in a beautifully organized way. Naomi.
No, I don't want to change the subject too
No,
much.
it's all right. All right, same topic?
On the same topic, so the embedded Google Drive folder that you had there, is that set to be shared to anybody with the link?
Yes,
Because
yes
I
it is.
wonder, Tom, did you have it set up differently where it was shared with specific people?
Nope, anybody with the link.
And the reason that I do that is I don't want them to click on something and then have to go request access to it, because that's just another barrier between what I want them to get to and the administrivia of having to get to it.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to figure out what was going on with the, it seems that, there's differences. How it opens up and.
Yeah, I don't know. The other thing is, it's set up so that when you click on it, you cannot make the edits. Obviously, as the owner, I can. I have also set this up as embedded, for embedded Google Docs, I'm sorry, so that they can, my students can comment on it. And that way, if they comment on, like, I don't understand this part here, I'll see it here in the Google Doc and I can make the change in right away. And all the other students can be like, oh, somebody else has a problem, they can add to the comment, me too, me too, me too, instead of getting 50 emails about, I didn't understand this part and I don't necessarily know what part they're talking about, so the comments work. You have an answer?
So the only way that I can find to do this is to just put a link to the site. You
Okay.
can't actually embed the site within Canvas.
And in some ways, this might be the easiest thing rather than embedding. Just let them go away from Canvas and deal with the Googleverse.
Yeah.
On
Sites
its own.
isn't really considered an app, it's a site.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't pop up when you go to external tools and choose Google Apps. And there's not embed code that you can get from your site to embed it, but
Okay.
there's a link. So that's what I came up with, unless you know something
John?
I don't know.
Just
No, I think you're right on
to
that.
think about when
It's a
you are,
site.
if you are
It's a
linking out to
site.
stuff like that, to include instructions with the link that links out to say how to remind them how to come back there. So like close the new tab or window or whatever. And then same thing in the instructions of the site too. So when they go there, they're not just like, wait, what did I need to do? I forgot what they said.
All right.
So something at the very least in that second place when they open that up, there should be some information about how to get back to where you were.
And what I've done here is I've done the first where I've added the link to the resource. And I do this because sometimes if they're trying to embed an iframe and your students are trying to access it on something else, it can get really hard to navigate. So I try to always remember to add a link to the resource so they can open it up in its sort of native space. Naomi.
I have a sort of tangential
All right,
use
let's move
case
on.
for the same embedded folder. I was working with a TA instruction or TA training and online instruction course as a facilitator over the summer, and my predecessor had designed this really I think kind of beautiful online teaching journal worksheet that we kind of iterated on, where it was a guided process where over the course of multiple days, people would fill in responses to specific questions in the sheet, but it was not super time sensitive. So at the end of the course, everyone needed to have completed the journal. And as they submitted the URL to the same Canvas journal in SpeedGrader, it would pop up for me as an embedded space
In Canvas.
in
SpeedGrader.
Canvas. And I think I have a picture for that as well, which was really helpful. Oh, that's in one of the attachments I sent you.
Yes?
So
Oh,
it,
add an attachment.
the nice thing was,
on the Canvas homepage.
it might even be in your inbox.
Image of what the instructor view would look like.
That is, I think the embedded folder view, but there's another one hanging around in your inbox. It was like a 3 attachment email. Sorry, I kind of cluttered your space. But no, I mean, like, just imagine it in your SpeedGrader,
Okay.
easily graded. The thing that was nice about that, though, that I want to like point out, and this is the useful picture for that, is that was my instructor view. But because I had set the permissions pretty carefully for my students, all they saw in that embedded area was their specific journal. And that made it really easy for me to just like say, like, you don't even have to really worry about maintaining access to the link. Just it's in your sidebar reflection journal through the redirect link. And it's just reduced the complexity for, I think, them.
That redirect link
In the apps.
we learned about at the previous active teaching lab that you'll have to go back and review if you haven't. Didn't come to it.
You're talking about the redirect tool in the apps area.
And I just want to clarify, so then, your embedded, Google folder,
It's basically this.
you as the instructor, you had complete control over what's being shared. Right, you got to zero in on a specific folder.
Yes, what I did was I took this folder, John's test class,
Yeah.
and
And there's
I took
requested
that
share-
URL up there
share URL
as the
attached.
folder ID,
Yeah,
and that information is in the,
yeah.
how to do that.
That's good. Just probably half of the questions I get from faculty when we start talking about this, they get real nervous because they say, I don't want students to see my whole drive.
Yep.
Just trying to drill in. You get a lot of, you can zero in on as small a chunk of your drive as you want to. So you don't have to
Yep.
worry with that.
Good. Other, so we're running out of time. What should we answer here? I'm gonna say I really want to know the answer to, and we will talk about it.
I have one brief note about onboarding faculty for Kenny, is that
Yes.
the embedding the Google Drive helped a lot with our other instructors, because we, in the front end, we had instructor versions and student versions, and we told the instructors, do whatever you want in the instructor version folder, and then when it comes time for showtime, we just move it over to student, and then it.
So that question of, wait, I want to make last minute changes, and then somebody goes in and messes everything up, which is actually a huge advantage of any sort of embedding in Google, right? Because I can just go make changes to this right now, and I don't have to re-upload anything in my Canvas site. It is just there, and it's immediate. And I can actually do it because I'm the owner of these things. I can do it in Canvas itself, day of. Go back to the home thing. And this is actually set up in the preview view, which I have listed on how to have preview mode with this nice no toolbar version of it. But I can make changes very quickly here. And even if I highlight things, the highlight, preview like that. Should show up, unless it's in preview mode, I guess. Well, there you go. Preview mode does that as well. I do want to say a few things about, one of the things that I learned about embedding Google Docs this week, just yesterday, was the publish this file online or publish from web is a responsive design. I didn't know that. So if I make this window smaller, it makes the whole sheet smaller, but the formatting is still good. We go to the embedded Google Doc examples. In the publish to web version, the formatting is all messed up. It's really,
That's how messed up it is.
it's really ugly,
Stay
but it'll adjust
yeah.
full-size fonts instead of shrinking the whole thing down. So if you keep that in mind as you're designing the document, you can make a document that is easy to navigate on a mobile device. If you have a worksheet and you want it to look like the worksheet that was printed out, then you can choose the preview mode, and that'll be your option. But if I'm having a student, if I'm a student and I'm trying to access a worksheet on this, it's gonna be this big, and I'm not gonna be able to read it even with my nice teenage eyes that can see stuff.
It's like doing a PDF or something.
Like, no.
So then, in general, would you recommend doing the publish to web rather than just grabbing the URL?
I think that it's depending on how you design your Google Doc. And whether you're gonna have a paper version of it versus a online only version of it. If I'm doing something online only, I would probably do the publish to web and not, this active teaching lab sheet is something that we designed specifically for printed off copy. So that was kind of a fun thing to learn about. And then there's also the trick of at the end of your embed code, or at the end of your Google URL, doing this where it says /published equals da 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 da. If you do /edit, then you get the toolbar. If you do /preview, then you get that nice gray box and it looks like a shadowy piece of paper. If you do /copy for the link, the students will get their own copy of it. And that's great for worksheets, where they get their own copy and with the prompts, rather than collaborations, which I've heard now that you can have prompts in the collaborations. Is that correct?
Prompts, what do you mean by
Prompts like, for this assignment, I'd like you to da 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 da. Or do they just get a blank Google Doc that the assignment description has to be outside of that Google Doc?
So we had all of the description in collaborations of what they needed to do.
In the assignment part of it, rather than in the Google Doc.
Because the collaboration automatically is an assignment.
Yeah.
We didn't have the directions in the Google Doc. Everybody just created their own Google Doc.
Yeah. And if you want them to say, I want you to collaborate on this thing where you answer these 5 questions, you can have that description in the assignment description, and then they copy question 1 and they paste it into their newly created blank Google Doc, and then they copy and paste question number 2 and then answer that. With the /copy thing, all of that can already be there in the Google Doc.
Just one thing with the /copy, make sure you're explaining, I would advise you anyway to explain what /copy, or when they click the link to that, because it comes up with a thing that says, make a copy. It doesn't show you the document and all, it's just a prompt that says, some really simple language and then make a copy button. And then they should know that that's now making a copy into their Google Drive, but I don't know what happens actually if they're not logged in, if they get prompted to log in, or if they just make a copy and it's kind of there and then poof, it's gone after they leave it. So.
Yeah, my theory is that it makes a copy into the Google Drive that is connected with their account, which should be their whisk.edu account.
That would make sense, right?
But because I've not tried this with my personal account.
If they were logged into a personal account and not their Whisk account, then it would make the copy into their personal account.
It would, okay, so whatever is open and.
So this one, I think, has a lot of room for confusion.
Yeah, which I'm hoping will be solved with CourseKit.
Another way to do it, of course, is to just get them to the regular, view only mode and tell them how to make a copy.
To make their own copy via file.
Yeah.
And that, yeah.
And then that lets them get more comfortable with learning how to use Google Docs in the future. So next time they come across one that's on the web that they want to make their own copy, they already know that skill.
So amazingly, we've run out of time again. Are there any last minute things like, I don't want to leave without knowing X, Y, or Z? We have the room for another half hour, so I will stick around. And you should feel free to as well if you want to explore any of these things. The Canvas site has a whole bunch of things up there. I would ask, thank you for coming, and please fill out one of those purple sheets and drop it off the table when you went out. That'd be great. And thank you to the contributors, and Jennifer has a question announcement.
Well, so there's this new thing I just came across called a cloud assignment, and it's like making that copy, but it's within Canvas, so they don't come across this page. There's an example on our active teaching lab page.
On the back here. So that's submit assignment via external tool.
Yeah, so if you go to like home in our Canvas course, there's a link that says Google Docs Cloud assignment, or you can just go to assignments, either one. Up, John. There.
All right.
Wait, just click on Google Docs Cloud assignment, and it'll bring you to the assignment. And then there's a button at the bottom that says load assignment with the example. And you click on that, and it just brings them straight to the template instead of telling them that they're making a weird copy. Wait, I don't think you should have to click on that. It should just come up. But maybe not. So, I don't know, maybe I don't have the permissions set right.
It worked for me. I had to select a Google account to authorize.
Oh, okay.
As the instructor, I wonder if I would have
Oh,
different,
maybe.
it operates differently. Thanks for coming, grab another cookie and some more cold brew on the way out if you'd like, and come back tomorrow and we're gonna be talking about Kaltura Media. So if you are using video in your classes, or you want to do in-video quizzing, that's now turned on for campus. That connects with your gradebook, so you can have them listen to you talk in your lecture for 5 minutes and then give them a quiz on what you just said, and then have them listen for the next 5 minutes.
This is
And
tomorrow morning.
This is tomorrow morning, where we will have hot coffee and bagels. And Morgan